So now that we've got our timber down from our roof storage, and we'll just show you all the parts that we'll be using to make up this instrument. And so starting off, first of all, we've got a nice piece of ash here that we're going to be using for the body, and we've got some lovely straight grain all along the edge here and some very nice cathedral grain up here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying this body in half. So this will be one half of the body and this will be the other half. So we'll be cutting it down something like that, and this part will flip around and glue onto here, so we'll have a nice straight grain all the way through the centre of the guitar, and then the more interesting cathedral grain patterns will make up the either edge. So that'll be our body. Moving on now, we've got a nice piece of maple here that's going to make up our neck, and we should be able to get probably 2 necks out of this. So when we're laying this out, we'll probably lay it out for 2 necks. We'll probably route out for 2 truss rod channels and that, just to use up the wood while we have it, rather than having to do it later on a different instrument. But we'll of course just be using the 1 neck. And we've got some Stumac cryo wire here we'll be using for our fret wire, and we've got our adjustable truss rod here. And again, this is a piece we had lying over from a different project, and this is a fretboard that's already been radiused, and it also has its fret slots cut already. So this is going to be our fretboard. And then we've got our black dot markers to go on the fretboard. So we're using up a lot of material we have lying around and that just to get this instrument built. Here's all our hardware. So we've got our pickguard, our neck pickup, our tuners there. We've got our bridge pickup, our output jack, all our mounting screws and that. We've got a control plate here that's already pre-wired, and our strap locks. We might come back to the control plate and we might change over the pots or maybe the capacitors or something like that, we'll see. But that's pretty much all the material that we're going to be using when we're making the instrument. And in terms of finishing, what we're going to do with the ash body is just like we did with Brenco's bass build. We're going to be using a Japanese technique called Shoshugi ban, and that involves us basically burning the instrument. So we'll be hitting the body up with a blow lamp to scorch the surface, and then we just brush out all of the soot and that. And then we come back with some Crimson Guitars finishing oil just to finish off the surface of it. So that's the plan of what we intend on doing, and we've got all our materials here. We think maybe might be 1 or 2 little pieces we haven't thought of yet, but that should be the whole thing. And so next what we're going to do is we're going to mark out our wood to get ready to begin the build. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out our body, and we're just going to use an acrylic template we have here. This is from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, absolutely fantastic company, and this is brilliant for lining up where you want to be able to see the grain, because you can actually see through it, as opposed to an MDF template where you can't. So we're just lining up this roughly on the center line and with our edge of the wooden board here, but this is just rough at the moment. We will be coming back to properly mark it out once we have it off the bandsaw on that. So this is just to give us a rough indication of what the body's going to look like. So we're just drawing around the edge here, and so that lets us know where the top half of our body is. And as we said, this piece is going to be glued on to the other part. So if we just take our template and we flip it around, then we can then mark out where the bottom half of the body is going to be. And same thing again, we're just roughly on the center line and with the edge of the board, and we're just going to again draw around the body just to give us a rough idea of how it's going to look. And as we said, this lets us see where our grain lines are and how parts might end up looking. So with that, we can see now for this part of the body we've got this nice cathedral grain up here, which will be just where the sort of forearm part of the body would be. And so that's going to look quite nice, and then we've got nice straight grain all the way through the center of the body, giving us good stability. So we can cut our body here, and then we can take this part and flip it around so these 2 surfaces will glue to each other, and that should give us our body blank then. And then we've got some spare at the end here we can cut off as well. So what we're going to do now is, now that we've got that laid out, we're going to break out our chop saw and just cut these parts off and get ready to start gluing up the body. So that's our two body pieces after they've come off the chop saw, and you can see we've got an almost invisible line that follows the grain pattern there. So just so we can catch it in the light, you might be able to see where we marked out the body, just there, and it all comes together just here. So this is our seam line here, and you can't even feel it because these two pieces have already been milled. They've been through a thicknesser and a planer and a jointer, so I've got lots of nice flat edges all ready to go together. So what we can do now is put that straight into our clamps and then glue our body blank up. So we've got our two body pieces ready, and we've got all our clamps here ready to go. So we're just going to start putting some glue on, and this is a Type Bond 3 Ultimate. So I'm just going to give a good squeeze of glue on both surfaces, and then we'll spread that out and take off any excess. So that's a decent amount on both surfaces, so we should get some good adhesion there. So just putting off our excess glue, and then we'll just put our pieces down and just get them together and just kind of squish them backwards and forwards, and it kind of helps the two pieces of wood grab each other. So we're just tightening up the bottom ones down, and again just moving these slightly backwards and forwards to ensure we have a good bite. That's all our clamps nice and tight, so just going to get a damp cloth here, and we're going to get rid of all this glue squeeze out so we don't have to try and deal with it once it goes hard later on. And that'll be our body blank all glued up and ready to go. So with the body blank gluing up, what we're going to do now is move on to the neck. So again, we've got our clear acrylic template here from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, a fantastic company as I've already said, and we've just drawn a centre line here, which is going to be the centre line for our neck, and we'll take all our measurements off that, and that centre line is parallel to this edge, which will also make it very easy when we're routing our truss rod cavity. So we're just going to use that centre line now, and we're just going to use this acrylic template to match it up to the centre line on the template to give us an idea of what our neck will look like and what the grain pattern will be like. And there's some kind of nice bird's eye grain patterns in this, so we're trying to incorporate some of them into the headstock here. So we're just lined up here and lined up here, so we're just going to again draw around our template, and this should be almost exactly what the neck is going to be like. There shouldn't be much of a difference at all. You see we've got marks on this template for where our dot markers are going to go, but we're not actually going to follow those because we're using the pre-made fretboard that we already have, so we want to take our own markings rather than trying to follow what's already there, just in case there are any differences. And so now that's our neck drawn out. I'll just take it in and show you that. So here you can see our headstock shape of our neck, and these are some of this nice bird's eye we're trying to incorporate into the headstock. Then we've got the rest of our neck shape here, and we've got our centre line. So what we're going to do next is we're going to work out where our nut line is going to be, and then where the truss rod is going to end, and we'll be able to mark out and measure that up, and then we'll get ready to route out our truss rod cavity. So we're just marking out now where our truss rod is going to go. So we already have our centre line, and then we're just marking our start and stop points for our router. So we've got that marked out here for here, and our router is going to stop here because we'll need to carve out this bit because it's a little bit wider. So between this point and this point is what we're going to have to route out to make a channel for the truss rod to go in. So we'll just be using a straight bit in our router cutter, and as I said, we're going to be using this edge as our guide, so we won't need any bearings or anything, and this will just run straight down and just cut out a nice clean channel there that we'll be able to slot our truss rod into. So now with our truss rod slot cut and our neck all marked out, we're going to take this over to the bandsaw and we're going to cut this just very close to the line but not right on top of it. So our neck is off the bandsaw and we've just reattached our acrylic template here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our homemade table router, and we're going to just buzz around all the edge here and get our final dimensions.